for Hermione got a generation of girls asking for extra homework, myself included. She provided a new kind of teenage role model to whom friendship and learning about the world was the most important thing. With that said, Hermione's style across the series is not something to be dismissed. The changes in her style say so much about her character growth, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the key elements of Hermione Granger's style across the Harry Potter franchise. My name is Ellie-Jean, I'm a style consultant, and on this channel, we find our style by finding ourselves. The Harry Potter series is very briefly about a boy called Harry. He's 11 and he ends up at a school for witchcraft and wizardry. He becomes friends with two students he meets on the train, Ron and Hermione, both of whom help him in his adventures. Hermione is the brightest and most brilliant in her year. Her parents are not magical, which means that she is not a true blood in the eyes of some characters.
No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood.
And this is something used to ridicule her and imply that she will never be good enough no matter what she does. And despite this, Hermione loves to learn about the magical world. She is incredibly enthusiastic about her studies, and she values her friendships and is incredibly loyal to her friends. Across Hermione's years at Hogwarts, we see some recurring patterns in her style, which signal to us that she is the girl next door, a relatable British teenage girl. The first of Hermione's style roots is flower. If you're unfamiliar with style roots, this is my style system where I break down the influences of style into 8 separate ideas. There's mushroom, mountain, stone, earth, flower, fire, moon, and sun. Flower is the delicate, intricate, feminine, soft style root. The most obvious instance of this is the use of pink throughout the series. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, especially, we see her for the first time really embracing this pink color. In the first 2 movies, there are some outfits that Hermione wears which aren't her school uniform, but it's really in this film where we see her come out of her typical tie and shirt. So she wears a pink zip-up hoodie with a pink shirt underneath. There are other very important pink moments throughout the TV series, like her pink dress in The Goblet of Fire, which I'm going to talk more about later. She's often wearing pink jumpers, pink cardigans. Sometimes pink is just a layer, so it might be under a jumper. And in the last couple of films, we also see pink appear in a very similar zip-up hoodie. It's somewhere between pink and purple, and she also wears a pinky purpley hat, but I think the point still applies. So pink is strongly associated culturally with femininity. It's also a very light, delicate color. There's also an innocence to her wearing pink, I think, especially as she isn't such a girl's girl in many ways. I mean, she's best friends with 2 boys. She's particularly nerdy. She doesn't fit in particularly with a girls group. She's not a girl's girl. She gets on with girls. She's got friends who are girls, but she's not really in those circles as much as she is with boys. So the fact that she leans towards this kind of femininity is a really interesting aspect of her character. I almost feel like her parents have bought her some general teenage girls clothes and she doesn't really care that much, so she's wearing them anyway. It's supposed to be typical teenage girl clothes, and Hermione doesn't really care. She's not against wearing girly things. She doesn't particularly want to. So she's got that nice in the middle there. And the pink is the strongest repetition throughout the series, so it's a core part of her character. And I think this is one of the reasons they went with pink as her Yule Ball dress rather than blue, which is what it was originally in the books. Speaking of that dress, other moments where the flower style route comes through is in her 2 dress moments. First being the Yule Ball, second being her red dress at Fleur's wedding, which carries us through a big chunk of the Deathly Hallows where they end up in London. She's wearing this beautiful red dress. Both of these dresses have very soft ruffles to them, which is very delicate, very feminine, very fairy-like. And the pink dress is an important style moment because this is the moment where we, the audience, and Ron start to see her as a girl rather than just Harry and Ron's mate who happens to be a girl. We really see her as, wow, okay, she's growing into a woman. The red dress, I think, is particularly flattering on Hermione because Emma Watson is a true autumn, which means her dominant features are warm, soft, and medium. So she's not particularly light, not particularly dark. She's somewhere in the middle. And Hermione's dress here is a true red, which means it would look pretty good on most people because it's very neutral, but it does lean slightly warm and it is very medium. And so it really honors colors in her features. Another fairy-like element we see in her style is the repetition of pea coats, or kind of double-breasted trench coats. There's nothing inherently fantastical about them, but they do tend to be used in these kind of fairy-like contexts. For example, Mary Margaret wears them on Once Upon a Time, and so does Alice in Twilight, who is the most pixie pixie-like of all the colors. There is something about this double-breasted petite coat style which has this slightly fantastical element to it and feels a little bit pixie-like. There's also something very Gamine-ish about it, and although Emma Watson isn't a Gamine, she's probably a dramatic classic, she's too tall to be a Gamine, she does have Gamine elements to her features, and what Gamine means is it's kind of this pixie-like, a little bit boyish but very youthful, delicate influence in your facial features, which looks really good when you echo it in your clothing. This kind of coat is a little bit Gamine-ish just because it has that contrast, those extra details of the buttons. What these elements show, and by having the flower style root in her style shows about Hermione, is that she isn't just a nerd, she isn't just a tomboy, she is not just practical, she does have this feminine undercurrent which often gets ignored by the boys and often gets ignored by the audience. For example, when, you know, we really see in that movie in Goblet of Fire that Ron can really hurt her feelings, and she's a really soft person underneath all the confident exterior. Hermione's second style root is Earth. The Earth style route is very natural, rugged, relaxed, can be bohemian, but not always, often is like a British influence. And one element we see in her style, which marries the two actually, it marries both flower and earth, is buttons and cardigans. The extra detail of buttons is again quite Gamine-ish, it's quite pixie-like, so that's why we see that come through. So there is like a fairy tale element to this. A great example of this is a blue cardigan that Hermione wears, I think in the Deathly Hallows, and it has these large sort of lapels and these little buttons. This is one of my favorite things she wears in all of the films, whether it's the pink blouse she wears in the Deathly Hallows or pink cardigans. The repeated buttons have a delicate femininity to them, but the reason that there's something earthy about it is there's something very natural about wearing like a woolen cardigan, something knit that brings the outfit down to earth. Other than pink, we see Hermione in a lot of neutrals, especially brown, grey, and green. Now, green isn't technically a neutral, but in the way she wears it, it does tend to be. For example, she might wear a lot of teal, but these colours, again, bring you back down to earth. Think of the ground. I mean, it's basically made of green, brown, and grey. And this just symbolises how down to earth she is, how grounded she is, how much she is, you know, on foot, in the woods. It adds this natural element, and I will say there is an earth root across the entire Harry Potter series. Most of the characters will have some kind of earth influence in their style, but it says a lot about Hermione and how we're supposed to perceive her. She's not the kind of teenager who is worried about getting dirty, worried about getting their hands dirty. She's happy to get into the action and be a real teenager. She's not trying to grow up too fast. She's happy almost still being a kid, which is part of the entire joy of the Harry Potter series, that we've got teenagers still sort of playing, investigating, and being curious. And this is not something you see in like Euphoria, where they're very much teenagers being adults too quickly. We don't see this quite so often, but she does wear some plaid patterns. These are a very British influence, you know, they kind of originate from Scotland, I guess. So again, it kind of grounds her as like a typical British girl, which is nice to see. Like, she wears a lot of rough, heavy textures, which we've already talked about with cardigans, but the rough knits also just like wool, for example, is literally taken from nature, and kind of rough natural fabrics feel like being in the woods. So whether it's a scarf or a hat, gloves, some kind of hoodie, Hermione is usually in something very natural rather than something synthetic. And this is continued with certain tribal or earthy patterns, as well as eclectic layering. I love this in Hermione's style. It's made to look like Hermione has just slung something on to keep her warm, but it's done very well, and it usually looks really cute without making it look like she knows that in any way. She has no idea if she looks good or not. She couldn't care less, but obviously they style her very well so that she does end up looking really good. So it could be a little hoodie peeking out over the top of a coat, a shirt collar underneath a blouse. The outfit I mentioned to you earlier that I really love with the blue cardigan with the lapels, that has two layers underneath. It has a blouse underneath with a grandad collar and then a stripy top. I mean, it's so random and eclectic and it makes no sense. And there's something very bohemian about that, about having things that don't make sense come together to make sense. So the earthy element in Hermione's style grounds her, roots her, shows that she is still a kid. She's practical, she's adventurous. The last style root for Hermione is stone. This is the very practical, casual, sporty influence in her style. For example, she wears a lot of hoodies, both zip up and kind of jumper style. And this is just a very practical thing. It shows she just slings it on. She doesn't think all that much about looking anything more than practical. She's not wearing anything particularly fancy throughout the series. She's practical. If she's hot, she takes it off. That is the extent of Hermione's thinking. It's very innocent. She wears some button-up shirts in the last couple of films, and they're almost man trans shirts. They feel quite masculine. Even the ones with flowers on, they remind me of shirts that my granddad would wear. And my granddad was pretty cool. He was not an old granddad. He dressed very nicely. But again, that kind of masculine energy of the shirts, denim and jeans. Don't need to explain why that's very practical. They're very hard wearing. They can look really cool. They can look very modern, and there is something quite modern about these elements. So it shows that these kids are relatable. They're just like you and me. They're not magical creatures. They're just regular teenagers. And lastly, within stone, Hermione actually wears a lot of stripes, whether it be on a polo shirt, on a jumper, on a hoodie. For example, the pink outfit in Prisoner of Azkaban, she's wearing a striped belt. And again, there's something very modern about that. There's something a little boyish and gaminish about stripes as well. With her stone style route, it basically just shows that she's a normal teenager. She's incredibly practical, and she's more interested in her physical life and her physical experience than looking fancy. It's not really something that has entered her mind at all until the Yule Ball, of course, and other moments where she needs to dress up, where she prioritizes that flower element of her style and brings out the girlish femininity that's underneath that the boys don't often see. They are more comfortable a lot of the time with the more casual, relaxed part of her style and the more casual, relaxed, sporty, adventurous, practical side of her. So when this flower element comes out, it's a shock to everybody, and we understand her more deeply as a character. Over the series, not much about her day-to-day style changes. We see a couple of British elements come in, like with the plaid patterns, these big style moments where we really look at her, like the Yule Ball and the red dress, show that she has this feminine undercurrent and shows that she's growing as a woman. Ultimately, Hermione is one of my favorite characters ever. You know, I'm in a generation where I grew up with her. She was a huge part of the cultural zeitgeist for me in high school. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, you will absolutely love the video that I've just done on Gilmore Girls, because Rory Gilmore has the same style roots as Hermione, so make sure to check that out and see if you can see the similarities in their style. If you would like me to analyze your style roots and do a full style analysis just like this video, head to bodyandstyle.com. I have a new service called Style Analysis. I have a features analysis, a style analysis, and a call with me that you can buy either separately or you can do different combinations of those. But the style analysis is one that I'm really excited about because it's a new option where I will literally, you can send me pictures of your favorite outfits, of your Pinterest board, and I will break that apart for you and show you what are the key elements of your style that you should be looking for and what are your style roots. So make sure to check that out. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time.